So welcome to this technical session, getting started with ArcGIS Experience Builder Developer Edition. And again, it's a beginner level for basic technologies. If you're looking for some advanced topic, you should go to somewhere else, but you are welcome to stay with us. My name is Wei Ying, a senior product engineer working for Experience Builder and the Web App Builder. And the co-present with me today is Paige, software developer from Professional Service. We will cover the following topics today. First, we will introduce some key features of Experience Builder and the Developer Edition, as well as its technology stack. We will have a demo showing how to set up Developer Edition and a common workflow of no-code and low-code collaboration. And second, we will talk more about Developer Edition, introducing the custom widget, app deployment, and other strategies like managing multiple environments. Also, they will come with demo. First, some key features about the Developer Edition. First of all, let's have some simple words about Experience Builder. It allows you to create exact app we want. It is highly configurable. We can build web apps and pages by exploring design decisions with templates, and you have access to various ready-to-use widgets, and when needed, you can build widgets of your own. It is data-driven, so we can create map-centric or non-map-centric apps. It is built on the latest web technologies and the version 4 of ArcGIS API of JavaScript. And with the Experience Builder Developer Edition, you still have the access to various ready-to-use widgets. And they are open source, which provides you good code samples. You can learn from them and easily modify them to meet your needs. Experience Builder uses GMU library. You can think of it as a collection of Legos used in the widgets. With GMU, you can quickly assemble components to build your own castles. And when designing your app, you can also preview and play UI components with various styles in Storybook. Storybook is a UI development environment and a playground for the UI components. In ArcGIS Experience Builder, we can use the Storybook as a standalone and isolated environment to document and preview the UI components in the GMU UI library and the theme core variables available for customization as well. With Developer Edition, the custom widgets and the themes are portable, which means it allows you to code once and use anywhere. Experience Builder is an extensible framework which contains several technologies. Let's talk about this. At the bottom level, we use the TypeScript as our official language, which is used throughout the builder. React is a JavaScript library we use for building the user interfaces. And the Redux is a predictable state container for JavaScript apps, and we use it to help us with the managing app state. And in addition, we use Webpack for module bundle. The Webpack is a powerful static module bundle for modern JavaScript applications. As we already mentioned, Experience Builder is built on the ArcGIS JavaScript API 4x, and Experience Builder lazy loads the ArcGIS JavaScript API. That means we load the API only when a widget that depends on it is required to load. Above that, we have the GMU library, as we mentioned earlier. It is a JavaScript library we use in Experience Builder. It is an extensible framework, and it has these 4 libraries packages. First is the GMU core, the framework core. It provides the interface and the types to work with the widget properties, message actions, data source, and etc. It also defines several classes that will be used throughout your experience. And then we have GMU ArcGIS. It is designed to contain the components that depend on ArcGIS JavaScript API. And then GMU UI, it provides the UI framework for experience. And the GMU for Builder, it includes some common functions used by the builder. It provides classes for developing the widget setting pages. And what's more, the UI component library we use is React Strap, which is based on the Bootstrap. As you learn, ArcGIS Experience Builder is flexible, configurable, and extensible. Non-coder and coders can cooperate together to create focused web apps. You can build your app with ready-to-use widgets without writing any code. And then, with the Developer Edition, you can input the existing application from an ArcGIS or Enterprise org or a zip file, and to make the application more powerful with some low-code development, such as to include some custom widgets, themes, or actions. And after you complete the application design, you can download it, and we minify the custom code on the fly to generate a smaller package. And Experience Builder will generate a new ID for each downloaded app. This is to prevent the browser caching, so the end user can see the latest update you made. And finally, you can deploy the application to your web servers to deliver to your end users. In terms of custom widget deployment, there are two patterns. One is to deploy it to your own web servers, and the other is to add the custom widget to ArcGIS Enterprise. To upgrade the apps created in previous Experience Builder Developer Edition, you can just copy the app folder from previous version to the new version. And the app folder is located under the install directory server public apps. If the app has its custom widgets, we first recommend you reading the breaking changes of each release. And once your widgets are copied to the new version, the TypeScript will work to flag if something is missing, like module or property. And there are some tips. So do not change the version of your copied app or widgets, because the widgets and app configuration are backwards compatible. And if necessary, you need to rename the app ID in the info.json file and the name of app directory. I know some of the senior developers have been working with the web app builder for a long time. And as previously introduced, there are various framework and the technical difference between Experience Builder and the web app builder. Because of that, directly converting custom widget and themes from web app builder to Experience Builder is not possible. Even though it is a manual process of migration, here are some tips and the recommended practice to consider as you are rebuilding your widgets or themes for Experience Builder. First, you are recommended to learn TypeScript, React, JSX, and the GMU library. Both web app builder and Experience Builder have manifest JSON for the widget, but the format in these two products is slightly different. So you need to update as appropriate. And the widget lifecycle method work differently in web app builder and Experience Builder. What's more, the widget HTML template used in web app builder now converted to JSX in Experience Builder. JSX is a syntax extension to JavaScript. It is recommended using it with the React to describe what the UI should look like. And any of the Dojo-specific modules must be replaced, as Experience Builder does not support that. And accessing map or scene object pattern is different in Experience Builder, since you can now have multiple maps or scenes in a single experience, where you can only have one map per web app builder apps. And then custom setting panel UI pattern is also different in Experience Builder. And overall, we would recommend you get more information about custom widget development in Experience Builder from the documentation if you are going to migrate custom widgets from Web App Builder. And now let's have a first demo. And rather than dive into the coding, we are going to focus on the developer edition setup and the collaboration between the no-coders and the coders. No matter you are developers or non-developers, you can build immersive web apps with Experience Builder. As non-developers, you can deliver great solutions using the built-in capabilities without writing any code. You can make design decisions using templates, and Experience Builder provides a library of templates that you can choose from. For example, I have built an application that using the provided templates. I have 2 pages here. This is introducing the groundwater monitoring projects. And the first page is a scrolling page introducing the monitoring wells using the maps, bookmarks, text, images, and medias. And the second page is giving insights into the monitoring wells, and you can switch between 2D and 3D instantly. And you can find the data of interest through multiple queries. You can check out the statistics, and even more, you can export the data of your interests. So that means with using the templates, you can quickly build a nice app with great workflow. Of course, we can always add new pages and the content. And this is as simple as well. So again, you have plenty choice of page templates here to start with. But you can also design a page from scratch. Let's add a blank grid page here, where the grid can help you organize the widgets. Just simply drag the widget you want to the canvas. Here, for example, let's add a map to display our data. And why not add an analysis widget here, so we can probably add some tool to analyze the wells and the data. So the analysis widget can support the spatial analysis and the raster analysis. And there are many ready-to-use tools right here you can choose from. Also, it can, if you can develop your own script tool, you can add it as a custom web tool here through the Joule processing service, or publish the web tools from ArcGIS Notebook. In my case here, I have published a web tool from ArcGIS Notebook, so I can simply just add it to my widget. And with that, as you see, it's very straightforward to build an app. And after you did your design, you can just save and publish it. And now a nice app is ready with absolutely no code, is ready to be delivered. While as developers, you can make your applications more powerful with some low-code development. And with the developer edition, actually, you can create your custom widgets, themes, and actions to further extend your applications to solve specific issues in your field. We can download the developer edition from the developer site here and unzip it, which I've already done. So I've downloaded the edition 1.16 and unzip it, and we are going to set it up. So now first thing is we will open the terminal or the command line in Windows system. Then we will go to go to the folder of server. Just simply run npm CI to install the dependent packages. Now that if you are just working with Developer Edition to use the data from your ArcGIS organization, then setting up the server folder only is enough. But if you are going to develop with the Experience Builder, have some custom coding, then you have also to set up the client folder. So same thing, you open another terminal and go to the client folder and then run npm CI to install as well. So while it is installing, let's create a client ID, which we will use in the registration step later. So a client ID is an identifier associated with the application that assists with the OAuth 2 authentication when you want to work with your content and the service from your ArcGIS organization. So to create a client ID, you have to log into the ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Portal account. So in my demo, in this case, I will just use the ArcGIS Online. So after you log into your organization, you will go to the content and then click New Item. You have two options to get a client ID, developer credentials and application. Both will achieve the same goal. And now, in this case, I will choose the developer credentials. And then you will choose the OAuth 2 credential and click Next. And the Developer Edition by default will run on the HTTPS port 00 HTTP 3001. So we will make this URL as the redirected URL here. And click Next. And you can customize the privilege if you need, and also customize the item accessing for the application of Experience Builder, or you can just pick for now. And then we give it a name. And just click Create. And with that, we can get authorization assist from ArcGIS Client API. So this is a client ID we will use later. So now let's go back to the local. Our installation has finished. Now we will just start the Developer Edition. We will run npm start under the server directory. And again, if you have the custom widget, you also need to start a client directory. So same thing, run the npm start. And with that, we can now launch the Experience Builder at the localhost 3001 port. And now the first thing you will do is to register. So now we will paste our organization URL here, and then paste the client ID we just created. And with that, it can connect to your organization, and then you can use the content and the data from there. With Developer Edition, you can create a new applications as usual, and you can also import your existing applications from your organization or a zip file from your computer. In this case, I will just input the application we just created in ArcGIS Online. Maybe not work wrong. So let me refresh. Okay, it just added to it. All right. What we are going to do here is very simple. Now I want just add a custom widget to my existing application. So we just go to the third page one and scroll down here. I just prepared a custom widget here, which I have previously added to the directory client, your extension, widget here. This is a custom widget I just downloaded from the community created by Jeffrey Thompson, who is right there sitting. Yeah, okay. Thanks for his contribution. Anyway, yeah. I just directly download and copy it. So now I can just use it. And I just directly drag it to my app and poof, it's done. So as you see, combining your existing application with some custom widget is very straightforward using the Develop Edition. Even if you are not a developer, you can still benefit from this strategy by using some widgets created by some talented developer, right? So with that, it's very straightforward to extend your application with the custom code. And after you design your application, extend it with custom widget, you can save and publish it, and you can download the application and then deploy it to your web server and deliver to your end user. And with that, I will hand over to Paige for more details.
Thank you, Wei. Great. So yes, like Wei said, now we're going to talk more about the custom development piece. And as we just saw, Wei grabbed that custom widget from the Esri community. There are also other places we can look for custom widgets. Of course, we can always build our own. We can reference the Esri community. Esri also makes public a set of Experience Builder sample widgets on GitHub, or we can modify out-of-the-box widgets. And hopefully it goes without saying, but if you're pulling code from the internet, please review that. Make sure you're not introducing any security issues or unexpected bugs into your own organization. And no matter how you obtain that custom widget, whether you've developed it yourself or pulled it from some online source, when you add it into Experience Builder in that left-hand pane where all of your widgets are listed, you'll see it at the very bottom in the section called Custom. And now we're actually going to get into developing a custom widget. So I'll pop over to VS Code, and I've already downloaded and installed Experience Builder Dev Edition. So I want to expand my client folder, your extensions, widgets, and this is where I'm going to place my new custom widget. And whenever I'm creating a custom widget, I like to start by copying the simple widget. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, copy and paste it right into that same widgets folder. And the reason I do this is because I know that the structure is going to be correct from the jump. So I'll go ahead and rename that. And I'm going to call it map chords, because my intention for this widget is that as my mouse moves around the map, I want my widget to report out the lat long of wherever I am. So I've renamed that. Now I need to go into my manifest.json file nested underneath map chords folder and make sure that the name listed here matches. So I'll rename that to map chords. And while I'm in here, I'll go ahead and change the label. So this is what you're going to see in the builder interface. Oops, map chords. I'll call it coordinates. Okay. Also, sorry, I meant to ask, can everyone see VS Code well enough? Is it big enough for you? I see a couple thumbs up. Okay. So I had previously developed this widget, which was based on one of Esri's tutorials. So I'll go ahead and just copy the rest of this code for the sake of time. So I will copy, close that, and paste. Oh, not what I wanted to do. Here. Okay, sorry. Live demos, gotta love them. I'm just gonna delete this one and paste in my previously developed one so we don't get confused. There we go. Okay, so we'll take a quick peek at the code. So within my map chords folder, I have a source folder, and then I have a runtime folder. And this is where in the most simple case where I'm going to define the business logic and the markup for my widget. Of course, as you develop bigger and more complex widgets, it's a good idea to modularize your code so that you don't have 10,000 lines in one file. But in this case, it's pretty simple, so I'm not going to worry about that right now. So a couple of things I want to call out is that I do have a dependency on the Maps SDK for JavaScript, and how I make sure that that dependency is loaded appropriately is by calling it out like this in my manifest JSON. I have the property dependency, and then I'm listing gmu ArcGIS, which is going to load the JavaScript SDK for me. And then I want to use the point module, so I can go ahead and import point as I usually would. And on pointer move, I want to create a map object, and I'm going to capture that Latin long. And then finally, the UI of my widget is very simple. I have a P tag, and I'm reporting latitude and longitude. Cool. So now, Experience Builder, since I already have my client and server up and running, isn't going to detect these new files automatically. So I actually need to stop my client and restart it so that it will detect that I now have a new widget available to me. So now that we've restarted, I'll come back over to my browser and load up localhost port 3001. And I had already started working on an application. And currently, I have a map widget, and the web map that's plugged into it has a single layer. And then I have a legend here, which just shows my USA parks. So now I want to bring in my custom map coordinates widget. So I scrolled to the bottom of that left-hand pane where I see map coordinates, and I'm going to drag and drop it in. I see right now, while I'm not hovering over the map, I just see the text lat long. But if I go ahead and save and just do the live view, as I start moving my cursor around the map, I see my lat long being reported out, which is awesome. Okay, so now I'm not quite done. I'm interested in showing an attribute table to my users. And so let's look at the out-of-the-box table widget. Oh, sorry. So I'll come back, turn off live view, and I will search for my table widget. Here it is. Okay. So one thing, and this is actually a real life example, one thing I've heard users say about the table widget is assuming you have an application that you only want to have the table widget configured with a single layer, this USA Parks, like the text that we see, if there were more layers, this would allow me to toggle between the different data sets, but because I know in my app there's only ever going to be one layer that I want to hook the table widget up with, this is just unnecessary. So I'm going to take the out-of-the-box table widget and just remove that chunk of code to hide that label. So let's see how we can go about that. So I'll go ahead and remove the out-of-the-box one from my current experience, and I will switch back over to VS Code. Close this. So one thing people are usually very curious about, they want to know where are all of the out-of-the-box widgets in the Experience Builder Dev Edition download. So if you go into your client folder under dist, scroll down to widgets, here you'll find all of the out-of-the-box widgets. And so you're free to go wild, copy those, modify them, do what you want to do. So table is nested under common. So I'll go ahead and copy that table widget. And then I'm going to paste it in under my extension so it'll show up as a custom widget. And now I will want to make sure to give it a unique name in the manifest.json. Experience Builder is not going to be happy if there are two widgets with the exact same name, so I'm going to call it custom table, and I'll update the label accordingly. And then I'll also go ahead and update the folder name. And again, I had previously prepared this widget for us, so I'm actually going to delete this one and use the widget that already has the commented out code for the sake of time. So I'll copy that widget and paste it in. So now, again, as we did before, I have to stop my client running and restart it so that it will detect that new widget. And once we get the green light, we can switch back over to Experience Builder Dev Edition, the builder interface, and I'll go ahead and refresh. And now I see, for some reason it doesn't have custom table, but I do see my table widget listed under the custom grouping. So I'll go ahead and pull that into my application. And now we can see that that USA Parks text is no longer there. All of the action buttons have floated to the left. So let's go ahead and do full width. Okay, so now we're looking pretty good. I got my web map, I have my table widget, I have my legend, and I have my map coordinate reporter. Which, check, we're still working, so that's great. So now, let's move on. If I switch back to our slides. Now I'm getting ready to deploy, and I need to decide whether I'm going to deploy the widget, or in my case, the two custom widgets I now have, or the app as a whole. And as Wei mentioned, we have two patterns. We can deploy the widget or deploy the app. And before anyone gets too married to this graphic, I want to give a little disclaimer. The only really hard requirement is that very first question we're going to ask is, do you have access to Enterprise 11.x? If the answer is no, you cannot deploy a custom Experience Builder widget, full stop. So at that point, you must deploy your app as a whole to a web server. Because before Enterprise 11, custom Experience Builder widgets were not a supported item type in Enterprise. So assuming you do have Enterprise 11, yes, we can move forward and start thinking about some of these other questions. And again, I know this graphic makes it seem very like black and white. The only black and white part is that first question. So next, I ask myself, will I reuse this widget in multiple apps? Because the huge perk of creating the custom widget and adding it as an individual item to Portal is that now anyone who's developing Experience Builder apps can easily pull in my widget. But if this is something that's so highly specialized that's never going to be reused, it may not be worth the effort. And I know here it says no, then deploy the app. I mean, you can definitely still choose to go that route, but this is just something you definitely want to take into consideration. And then the third and final thing I would consider is, does my customer/stakeholder know what to do with a custom widget? So if I, as the developer, created the widget, I posted it on a web server, and now I'm handing it off to the GIS configuration person in my organization, but maybe they're new, they've never worked with Experience Builder, and they're kind of like, I don't know what I'm doing with this. Well, maybe, again, it might not be worth the effort. It may be if I'm going to then go in and do the configuration myself, but it might just be simpler if I am developing my widget and I configure my entire app in Experience Builder Dev Edition and just go ahead and host that entire app. So just things to think about to see, is it worth the effort or not? If I do choose to go the custom widget deployment route, my target is going to be ArcGIS Enterprise. And the first step I need to take is hosting that custom widget on a web server. Once I've hosted it, I can then register the widget with Portal, share it out, and then that widget can be consumed in any Experience Builder app. And the link I have on these slides links to some great documentation on how to actually carry out that whole process. If I'm going to deploy the app as a whole, then my target is a web server. And I'm going to build my entire experience in Experience Builder Dev Edition, including my custom widgets. Then I'm going to download the whole thing as a zip file. I'll unzip those files, and I'll modify a specific config.json file to plug in that client ID, as Wei was showing us, to assist with authentication. And then finally, I'll host that entire thing on a web server. And an optional additional step would be to then take the URL that you have that points to that app and add it as an item in Portal so it's discoverable through Portal, but you don't have to do that. So now let's look at a deployment demo. So I'm satisfied with my Experience Builder app, and I've decided I'm going to go ahead and host the entire app on a web server because I don't want to host 2 separate widgets. I'm already here. I've configured the whole thing, and I'm happy with it. So I'm going to go and download. First I'll publish, thank you, Wei. And then I will download the application from the builder interface. And in my case, I only need to support English, so I'll just leave that selected and hit OK. And once this process runs, it's going to give me a zip file. So this might take a minute, but I do already have this zip file on my web server. So let's switch over to the web server. Log me out. Okay. So I have a zip file that's super tiny. Do you know how to make this bigger? Does anyone know how to make it bigger in the Windows Explorer? Control scroll. Aha, okay, thank you. You guys are teaching me. Okay, so I have my zip file and I've gone ahead and unzipped it. So if I open up that folder, I'll see a CDN folder was created. I have an index, HTML, service worker, and web config. So if we remember back to what the next step is, I need to go into the CDN folder, into one, and then into my config, got small again, config.json. And here I need to find the client ID property. So I've actually already plugged in the client ID I created ahead of time so that I'll be all set with authentication. So I'll save that change and close it out. And I'm working on a Windows server, so I'm going to use IIS for hosting my app. So I'll open up IIS. Again, super small. This might be, how about this one? How do we zoom in? Nothing. Okay. Well, so if you can see on the left-hand pane, I know it's very small, but under the machine name, I have sites, then I have the default website, and I have both Portal and Server installed on this server machine, but I'm also going to host my custom app here. And so what I did is I right-clicked on the default web server and chose Add Virtual Directory. And here's where I'm going to define a name for that subdirectory. And so, if you can see, I chose Park Explorer. That's the name of my application. And then I just need to give it the physical path. So I had stored that at C, exbdev, exbdev demo custom widgets, and hit OK. And now my app has been hosted. And I have a URL I can go to actually view that application. So I'll come back here. And if I go to that URL, now I see my app just as it looked in Experience Builder Dev Edition, but now actually hosted at a URL that could be hit by well, depending on my sharing, it could be hit publicly or anyone in my org. So when we think about managing multiple environments, there are a couple of ways we can accomplish this. So whenever we want to move either from Experience Builder Dev up to AGL or Enterprise, or between AGL and Enterprise, we can look at ArcGIS Online Assist, which, for those who haven't used it, lets you view and modify the underlying JSON of any item, also lets you change ownership of items. And then ArcGIS Assistant is kind of the follow-up to that. It's still in beta, but I do want to call it out that it's still a great tool despite being in beta still. We can also script out this process using the clone items method that the ArcGIS API for Python makes available to us, or we can utilize the web experience class in the Python API. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the automating using that web experience class, and I'm going to use it to upload my local Experience Builder app to my enterprise. So let me come back over to VS Code, collapse this, and I've already prepared a simple Python script. You guys might not have expected that you'd be sitting in an Experience Builder session and getting some Python, but here we are. So I'm importing the GIS module, I'm importing web experience module, which is going to let me interact with Experience Builder apps. I need to authenticate with my portal, then I'm logging out who I'm logged in as, and finally I'm instantiating my Experience Builder app or web experience object. And how I do this is by, what's key here is giving it the path. And because I'm working with a local application, the Python API makes the assumption that I've already downloaded the app, because if you haven't downloaded it yet as a zip, this file path does not exist. So I need to download it first to have that CDN folder one and then config.json. And then the final step is calling upload on the web experience object, which is going to push that app up to my portal. So I can go ahead and run this. Okay, and so now if I hop over to my portal, to my content, all my content, I now see it's going to, unless I specify otherwise, it'll be named experience via Python and then some ID that gets generated. So I'll go ahead, click on that, and view. And one thing that's really important for me to mention is I use the application in its base state that we started with, where I just had the map widget and the legend. So that's why it looks like this and not like the app we just worked on hosting. If your Experience Builder Dev Edition app contains custom widgets, that little code snippet won't entirely work today. This is something that the team is aware of and is working on fixing. But what it would look like is, let me go back. So this looks a lot more similar in terms of the layout to that custom app I hosted, but I see a fail to load message for both my custom table and my map coordinates widgets, or widget. So that is a known bug right now, but I just want to let you know, so if you try to run this and you see this fail to load, that would be why. Okay. And now I wanted to share a few resources with you guys. So first one is just getting started with developing custom widgets, and then a link to some of the tutorials. And under that link is where you'll find the map coordinates widget that I had built today. And the third link is to the Python API documentation, and then finally a link to AGO Assistant. And now we'd like to open up the floor to questions.
Custom widgets wanted everything about except it's failing. Is it because of the item ID?
He said, so your question is when you migrate the customer widget to the another environment, it shows fail. Is that because of the custom ID, the widget ID?
So, well, do you want to say what you had said to me earlier?
What?
About the widgets not existing?
I think it's another reason, but the team is Python API team is working on fix that. I think it's because it cannot read or get successfully access to the custom code when you are moving it up.
Well, I was thinking if we move the custom widgets to the new item ID, then we can read the item ID.
Like if you had already done the work of hosting them and adding them to Portal.
Yeah, that's what guessing probably will work because it's already aware by the portal if you have already hosted.
Yeah. We just want to put pressure on the Python team to do that for us so we have less work.
Go ahead.
I noticed when you showed the app, there was a banner at the top. It said this experience.
Higher version, like something like that.
Is there a way to get that to go by users?
Actually,
That's because developer edition is higher than the portal's experience. Edition, correct?
Did it say that with both?
oh yes, because the developer edition you created the app is higher version than the portal you're deploying with the app. So unfortunately, I don't think there's. I think there's somewhere we can modify the string and hide it, but I'm not sure where it is. But you can come back with the boost. I will check out later. But there should be a way to hide this string. Yes.
Any other questions? Yes.
I created a web app that I like, and I used the template, and I started it with several templates. But when I finally picked one that I liked and created this web app, I couldn't remember what template I selected. Is there any way to determine that from looking at
You mean the web app builder or expense builder template? Template.
So the question was about finding a template that you like, you've used it, you built your app, and then you want to go use that same template again, but the problem is we can't remember what was the specific name of that template. I suspect it would be buried in a JSON file somewhere.
I don't think so.
It's not.
There's actually no specific ID or specific name for the templates. We just, I don't think you can identify it from the JSON.
Well, someone else could show the data item.
Data, what?
Data, using data item.
Data item. Item ID, like. Item ID. Yes, that probably is work because each one is also a host as item. You can find some specific identifier as the item ID probably in the config JSON. Yes.
First of all, Robert Schleichling deserves much of the credit for all widget. So the Python API, can it handle migrating data sources and the map?
You mean?
Yes, but so, and this is all documented. If you don't give it any sort of item mapping, it's going to try and search for the exact data source. So in my case, because I had already connected to that specific enterprise portal from Experience Builder Dev Edition, no issue. But say, for example, I had connected to Portal in Dev Edition and now I want to push it to AGOL. You can pass in an item mapping and then the Python API will do the work of mapping feature layer to feature layer or web map to web map to make that all work. But yes, there is a little bit of legwork on the developer's part to create that item mapping to pass in. Yes.
The showcase here was relatively simple to show us how everything works. If you're making a much more complicated widget, could you have the file structure of the widget be the same way how React file structure and components?
What was the very last part? Sorry.
Could you split up the file as components in React? So we React as components, or
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
So the question is, obviously we're demoing very simple widgets, but if you were to develop a very complex one, could you write your code such that it's made up of smaller components within your one widget?
Yes, it should be, yes. As the same way, like mentioned before, that you can assemble the GMU components to create your own widget, same as you can use React components as well. Yes.
Any other questions? Yeah.
But just to make sure your React version is what we recommended. Like in the 1.16, we recommend use 18, React 18. Yeah, just check out the recommended version of React.
So we don't use Enterprise, and we don't have a full portal, but we do have our web server, and all of our online maps are fed through our REST services that are on our web server. Can we use developer without having like the Enterprise?
Without having connected to the enterprise?
Yeah.
Good question.
Yes.
Because we have our own web server where we can add all of this stuff.
Yes. So the question is, can you use Experience Builder Developer Edition exclusively with ArcGIS Online? Right. The answer is yes. So when after Wei had first downloaded and installed everything and navigated to localhost 3001, you get prompted for some URL, either an AGOL org URL, which she did authenticate with. So yeah, she showed you could do it with ArcGIS Online, and I was showing you could do it with Portal. So yeah. Yeah.
Develop like an experience builder app in ArcGIS Online, not developer edition, and then in your own portal download developer edition, and then use that one that you created on ArcGIS Online as a template.
So you mean you created something just online, and then when you want to work with the developer edition, you want use the templates from ArcGIS Online?
No, like use that existing experience builder on ArcGIS Online as like an import. Can you import that?
Yes, you can input app from ArcGIS Online. Input the application from the organization you are connecting with. So if you are connecting the ArcGIS Online, you can input either the templates or the application to the developer edition. Yes.
What if I'm using the method of not the same as ArcGIS Online?
But she's talking about developer edition, right?
So you develop in ArcGIS Online, with just like experience builder. Then you want to add more functionality to it, so then you download experience builder, developer edition. Can you import what you've already started in ArcGIS Online to that?
Yes.
Yes.
That's what I have demoed, the workflow.
Yeah,
Yes.
so that's, what Wei was demoing. That she, exactly what you just described. She started just configuring an AGOL, realized she needed some custom functionality, so then she was able to
But
pull that app down and bring it into Experience Builder Dev, where then she could pick up right where she left off in AGOL and bring in the custom widget.
But there should be some backward compatibility issue. If you are building in the latest ArcGIS Online application and import it into the developer edition, which is in a older version, then the new widget, if you have contains some new widgets or new functionality, it won't load. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Good.
We got time, so both.
Let's just say I created a custom widget in Portal and 11.3. What does that implicate when like new releases come out, 11.4, 11.5, and 12? Does that mean that I have to update my widget as new releases come out, or is it more like when a major JavaScript framework modification comes out? What is your recommendation in maintenance of a custom widget long term?
So,
So the question was, like, what do we need to think about in terms of maintaining our custom widgets, especially when we're upgrading Enterprise over time?
good question. So, I think when you upgrade the custom enterprise, there will have the building experience builder will have some newer features each release. But the custom widget you mentioned is like you developed earlier with developer edition hosted in the enterprise, right? I think there won't be an issue loading some widgets created in older version to the newer enterprise builder. It shouldn't be any problem. So if there would be some problem, then I would suggest you putting the custom widget back to the develop edition, and they will tap when you are start from the client and the server. There was some messages telling you if there's some property missing or like a version conflicts. So I was like, just see if the widget, if it doesn't work in the newer enterprise builder, then you just put it back to the work with the developer edition again and check if there's some error and fix it as needed. Yeah.
Are there any like Git workflows or that you all recommend for like collaborating on custom developer experiences? Like, I mean, you Git like the June file and all that, like repositories.
So the question is about recommendations for using some sort of version control like Git to collaborate on your custom widgets. Do you want to answer or I can? Do you want to answer or I can take this one? Okay, so I would highly recommend not doing what you saw us do today, where we're dropping that custom widget straight into the Your Extensions widgets folder. That makes version control very hard because you're going to be copying and pasting a lot of code because you probably don't want your Git repo to be cloned into the Experience Builder Dev Edition install. So I would recommend making use of symlinks. So whatever you normally do for when you're working on some project where you're utilizing GitHub, clone that into a place that you like, and then create a symlink pointing to an apps folder and a widgets folder. So those, as soon as you pull down any changes into your local repo, the symlink exists and they will appear in your Experience Builder Dev Edition install without having to actually live there. And that also fully eliminates the conversation around like, well, should the entire Experience Builder Dev Edition folder and all the files that make it up live in our GitHub repo? I would say the answer is probably almost always no, it should not. So use symlinks. And if you don't know about symlinks, go learn about them because they're awesome.
Any further questions? Well, seems no. Well, thanks again for attending this session, and you are welcome to give us the feedback, and please do so.
Yes, please. It'll help determine whether we can do this session again next year.
Thank you.